We're just about at start time, but my co-chair is out of the room. I'll wait about another minute for him to come back. Adam, are you able to hear me? Oh.
Yes, I can.
Okay, I see. Is anyone remote able to hear the stream? Just to confirm that the feed is working.
Yes, I can.
I got 2 yeses. Okay. All right. Do you want to drive or do you want me to drive? All right. Welcome to IETF 124 in the DRIP meeting. Good afternoon. It is time to get started. Whoops, where are we going? For those of you who haven't seen this before, the note well describes your obligations and rights with respect to contributions to the IETF. We expect if you are in the room or on the lists that you are familiar with this. If you are not, please do so before coming to the mic or participating on the lists. There are several RFCs here. You can find this slide pasted all over the place. Some meeting tips if you're using MediaEcho. There's a couple of different clients you can use. Please keep your audio and video off if you are not speaking or participating in the conversation. There is an on-site tool that if you're in the room, you can use that to just raise your hand and get in the queue. Use of a headset if you're remote is strongly recommended. Thank you, Susan. And some resources for you if you're here. The general agenda is at the first link. How to use meetings, how to use the meeting tools and the preparation for the meeting tools is at the second, and how to file a task if you need more general support from the tools team and rest of the IETF secretariat can be found at the third. We have a chat relay volunteer, I think, and a minute taker. Those don't have to be the same people. Which are you taking care of?
I got the minutes.
You got the minutes? Is someone who can take care of it? That's unfortunate. Thank you. So we've done the note well. The next thing is the agenda bash, which is the next slide. This is our planned agenda. Are there any, I believe we have one item for any other business, which is not on the slide. I have a slide for it, but it's not on this slide. Is there anything else, any changes to the agenda people would like to make? If not, we'll go into, does anybody who is participating in the hackathon want to give an update for work that was done, what was achieved? I'm seeing a very vigorous shake no, but someone coming to the mic?
I can throw that in as part of mine.
Okay. Let's see. All right. So our next presentation, our first presentation will be International Harmonization of UAS related standards. Stu, let me find your slides here. I think that's, tell me if I've got the current one.
V5.
Is that V5? It's dated today.
That was the one on the data.
Yep.
Okay.
So for those who don't know me, I'm Stu, and my affiliation for this work is with a company called AX Enterprise, which is at a test site for uncrewed aircraft systems. The name on the agenda was a little bit of a misnomer. I'm really talking about the drivers for the work, and then Bob's going to talk more about the SDO harmonization. And please don't read the fine print. It really is fine print in the usual sense of the term, regulatory text. It's for the diligent student to look at afterwards. Next. Yeah, so right now, the whole global UAS community is focused obsessively on beyond visual line of sight operations. And there's a lot of goals there. They need to first off be secure, which leads to safe, and which hopefully enables effective. And what of course they're all after ultimately is making money at it. Oh, this is V4 actually. All right, well, so the miss,
Change it if you like.
nah, it's okay. I'll just tell you what the missing line is. After I say the global UAS community is focused on that, I've got a line in V5 that says, and just yesterday, the new regulations for beyond visual line of sight, extended visual line of sight, shielded operations, which means like right up close to a building or a bridge or an antenna tower or whatever, and medium-sized UAS, which means over 25 kilograms but under 150 kilograms, they went into effect in Canada. And so that's kind of big news. Then the rest of this slide, actually, this is, yeah, okay.
Do you want me to go to 5? I have them both here.
Yeah, if you've got 5,
Yeah, hold on.
because I'm not sure
I
actually which version
cleaned
this
it up,
is.
but the tracker's showing me both of them. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. Might be the same from that point on. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure you delete the phone 4.
Yeah, it shows me all of them. That's still the wrong one? They're
That's-
labeled almost exactly the same.
Oh, I'm sorry.
1 second.
Should say V5 right in the file name and in the title. There we go. Thank you. This is a lot easier to read. So there's the BV loss, the extended V loss, etc. So the U.S. government, 2 of its agencies, the Federal Aviation Agency, which is our civil aviation authority in the U.S., and the Transport Security Agency, which is in an entirely different department of the government, jointly issued what they call an NPRM on normalizing BB loss ops. So I'll try to overwhelm that. So BB loss operations have been taking place for, I don't know, probably 2 years now, but each operation has been under a waiver of the regulations because there were no regulations under which beyond visual line of sight operations could be routinely conducted. And so this NPRM is on normalizing those operations such that if you color within the lines, follow the regulations, you can just do it. You don't need to get a regulatory waiver. Now, that first bulleted paragraph there about performance-based regulations, that is an excerpt from the summary of the NPRM. And there are several parts of the rules that reinforce, refine, or extend the requirements for remote identification and tracking. I don't call out those sections of the rules in this presentation because they're mostly in respects that don't affect DRIP. Our existing DRIP RFCs are just fine. But more importantly, next slide, there's a whole bunch of new stuff. They're going to mandate strategic deconfliction, where before flight, you go into a network overlay for this purpose that deconflicts your use of 4-dimensional airspace volumes with other UAS and crewed aviation operations. Then conformance monitoring means that after you've done this pre-flight strategic deconfliction and you are actually flying, you need to monitor your own adherence to the flight plan that you filed and let everybody know if due to wind or your battery fading fast or whatever, you've strayed outside the planned 4-dimensional volumes. Now, that has to be done using an automated data service provider under a different rule part. More on that later. Now, flight data. They're now specifying that you have to have adequate security measures for confidentiality and integrity of collected flight data, whatever that means. That goes back to performance-based regulations. The regulator is not saying how to do it. They're saying what you must do. And they're turning to industry standards groups to write consensus standards on the how. Then signal monitoring and transmission. And then finally, the new Part 146. For the automated data service providers. This is something that had not been recognized as an entity under the previous rules. It means all the stuff on the ground that manages and transports and stores all of the data that is associated with your flight operation. Now look at A, B, C, D, and E. If those don't scream IETF, I don't know what does. Next slide. Okay, here's where I talk a little bit about harmonization. A lot of that takes place in the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. But ICAO can be slow to converge because it has 193 member states that all have to agree, and not all of those member states get along all that well with each other. Fortunately, the agencies in Brazil, Canada, the EU, and the US formed a consortium, Drones Quad, often pronounced Drone Squad, to facilitate development of standards that can then be cited in means of compliance documents, which are regulatory filings that can then be accepted by the regulators in all 4 of those jurisdictions. And just last week at the ASTM, yet another SDO committee meeting, the official representatives from the CAAs of Japan and the UK stated their desire to join or at least align with Drone Squad. So this allows us to move forward before all 193 member states can come to full agreement. Their endorsement is based upon their eval of how well a standard meets applicable criteria. They have a list of 31 such criteria. Next slide. Okay, here are from that list of 31, the ones that are potentially relevant for DRIP under our current charter. That does not mean that DRIP alone can fully address any one of the requirements that these criteria apply to. It means that by looking at the criteria as stated by Drone Squad and tweaking the language of our draft, we can make it very easy for other SDOs that are specifically aviation focused, as of course IETF is not, to cite our IETF DRIP standards in their stuff, which would be means of compliance that the regulators can then accept. IETF standards are already cited right and left in a lot of these things, but the problem is those aviation focused SDOs and the aviation regulators, they don't know the art of the possible. Right? We would have been doing some of this stuff years earlier if only they had known what modern compact crypto could support in network protocols, but they didn't, right? So they set the bar unnecessarily low with regard to authentication because they didn't know what we were capable of doing. So DRIP is largely about bringing them up to date on what current cryptographic network technology can do so that they can then say, oh, yeah, we'd really like to have that level of safety and security. Next slide. So these things are getting faster, they're flying higher, and they're getting bigger. And this is to support things like cargo delivery and air taxis. These really blur the lines between a little $49 thing that you buy at Walmart that unless it flies right into somebody's face isn't going to hurt anybody, and conventional crewed aviation with its attendant risks. So this is increasing recognition of the urgent need for what we've begun calling trustworthy air domain awareness, which starts with remote ID, but would also include things like automatic dependent surveillance broadcast mode, ADSB, and various other things. And the whole point is to support that pre-flight strategic deconfliction of what are called operational intents. And then after that, monitoring the conformance that you really stayed in your 4D boxes. And then in flight, what they variously call tactical deconfliction or self-separation or detect and avoid. These are all intended to keep you at a sufficiently safe distance that you don't even need to worry about collisions. But if that fails and you get too close, then you get into what's called collision avoidance. And our play here as the IETF is just to ensure the trustworthiness of that data. ASTM is coming up with a new so-called trajectory intent message. The current messages say where the aircraft is and what's the velocity vector that it's on right now. But if you're about to bank hard left and rapidly descend, that's not enough information. So the trajectory intent message is intended to say, and these are the maneuvers that I intend to perform real soon now that you might need to know about. And that really needs to be secured. All of these things need to be secured so that one aircraft doesn't make some dramatic maneuver in order to avoid another aircraft that doesn't actually exist, that's a fiction, that's a spoof, right? And if we don't do that, then this creates an entire new class of denial of service attacks. Not denial of service attacks on the network, but denial of service attacks on airspace. I don't dare enter that airspace because I'm getting these transmissions that say somebody's there and I don't want to hit them. Next slide, and I'm just about done here. So our goal is to ensure this trustworthiness within the applicable frameworks from ICAO, from the Association of Uncrewed Vehicle Systems. ICAO is about all aviation, not just uncrewed, and AUVSI is about all uncrewed, not just in the air. And we standardize already in DRIP almost all the pieces needed for a complete solution. We only need two more things: a process specification for populating and querying the registries with the data that needs to be kept private, just like a private registration that you can't see and who is, and a single point of entry so that anybody who's not familiar with IETF can start with one document that gets cited in the mock, and from there they can figure out all the other stuff that'll get the aviation regulators to accept the mocks, the manufacturers to develop products and declarations of compliance about their products, and the UAS operators to actually start operating under them. I think I'm done except for one last slide. Yeah, and this is how does the drive drip work, right? There's externalities way there over on the left. They already drove our development of requirements and architecture and Bob's drip entity tag and Adam's drip authentication formats. And Adam's latest is sitting in the RFC editor queue, and the RFC editor tells me it's a matter of weeks before that's released as an RFC, assuming that we don't have too many iterations of the edit cycle. And then the thing we're missing is the red one, a mock citable system spec, including private registration processes and drip key infrastructure essentials. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff that is arguably not even in our current scope that would require a recharter or a new working group or whatever. But those are about what you do with the information, not about making it trustworthy. So please, please consider adopting and reviewing Adam's draft as the final missing piece to this puzzle to complete our initially chartered scope, which is still our charter. I think I went about a minute over.
Questions? You got it.
So I will shout as well, right? You can hear me, I guess. So Eric has responsibility here. Can we go back one slide? And thank you so much for writing the 2 points that is missing. This is clearly identifiable. Now, process specification, populating DNS, that's something like a recommendation for CAA or to whatever to do it. Basically, I'm unsure whether it, and the other point as well is more like helping the aviation community how to use the RSC. And I'm really unsure whether it's the IETF job to do this.
Understood. We're really writing the technical standards that we hope other people will cite. We're just trying to make it easy for them to cite, not having them navigate the whole, IETF maze in order to do that. And with regard to the populating the registries, the issue is that it's not just a matter of populating DNS. It's just like when you go out and you register a second level domain, you have to provide a whole bunch of data which you may or may not want to be publicly released. And we need certificates issued because otherwise you shouldn't trust this data that's coming over the air any more than you would have before DRIP.
Okay, on the second point, right? I mean, the second on the slide. Helping, what about a blog post somewhere? Because it's way lighter than writing an RSC. A blog post or something, right? That could be authored by this working group or whatever, or review, and some IETF blessing, but not an RSC because it's heavy.
We have wiki pages too.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Murray.
I don't think there's another person present in the room who can say whether or not that's feasible, but it's my understanding that unless it is an RFC, they can't cite it in the regulation of the mock.
But we don't typically write RSC how to use other RSC. That's my biggest problem. Now, regarding I understand, right? You need to get a registrar and so on. But if not mistaken, Murray, that was one of your previous working group, right? When you were the AD.
Sorry, which one?
RDEP or whatever. Registration protocol?
Oh, regex and
Regex, yeah. And this is basically what they are doing. So there are a lot of things that already exist, right? I talked briefly on Adam on this. So we need to continue at least some discussion there. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
I sympathize with the point about, I understand the need. I don't know how to solve it easily. The ISG has, in the past, in my experience, said things like, we can't do these sorts of documents. There's no archival value, especially because later, if you update one of the DRIP documents, now you have to update this thing too.
We've been thinking in terms of possibly a BCP, right? A best current practice document that points to all of the others. You would be challenged on what's the plan for when one of the other documents gets updated. Do you also update the BCP? Now you have two documents to update.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
Other questions, comments?
Thanks. I'll sit down.
Thanks. Stop sharing those. Start sharing. Let's see who you are.
First, I want to thank Murray for all the comments he's made in the work group on our documents in the past. Some really good comments on help on that, and for him stepping up now as well. So first, I want to make that that acknowledgement for Murray's presence here. And
That's you. Yep.
that's me, yes. I have been heavily embedded in other SDO activities, particularly ASTM and IKO. And as much as I can, some of the others. So we'll go on that. The world is moving on. Let's go to the first slide here. Next slide.
Right. There we go.
Okay. DRIP came about to fill a technology hole in the ASTM 3411 standard. 6 years ago, I was told, oh, we cannot do security, we cannot do authentication. It's too hard, it's too big. I said, want to bet? And that's what became DRIP. We're almost done with the original items, as Stu mentioned, but the industry regulators are raising the bar, which is what also he said. We need to stay engaged with the other SDOs. Go on.
You can use this.
Oh, there's a clicker here.
There is.
There's a clicker. Does it work? Hello, did I push that button? Yeah, I guess it did. Okay, so ASTM coordination. They're revising 3411, and one of the interesting things, a lot of pressure was getting operator privacy in there. The first responders don't want to have people know where the police officers are or the firemen and the rest. They want to, and surprisingly, I have a draft for that. And we're getting that work now rolled in to the protocol to support operator privacy. But they want to reference an RC, not a draft for that new work coming out right now. The other thing that Stu mentions, we have two new proposals, FAA Part 108 and Part 146, and then a major, what's called A2X and DA effort that's coming along. This was going to be major support for beyond visual line of sight, where all the focus is now in the industry. And guess what? I have a bunch of drafts. I've been writing about this for the past 2 years. I've been working along and talking about what we would need to do to be able to support this. And this work, or something close to it, is what we would need for our statement in how to meet these various standards. So I'm just listing them all here for what I have and not spending time going through them in depth. Don't have the time for that. ICAO coordination. The next trust framework meeting, we're going to almost touch on the certificate profile guidelines, which Michael says publication is imminent, and the certificate profiles I have in DRIP DKI are in 10169, but they don't like to reference a draft. They want to have some official document to reference. And I've also that there's other aviation areas where they want to get these things referenced. And so we need to, so what is our profiles? What these certificates look like? Tangential to this is the nav and surveillance panels, which have SBAS and ADSB. I'm working on that, and we're going to go more on that. And though the GNS SBAS has their own PKI, which will not scale up to the needs for ADSB, and what we'll perform, we had a meeting on that Tuesday over at ICAO, and we're setting some direction on that. But that's more orthogonal, but very important. You're okay. You're okay. It gets hard again until you're okay. Canada has gotten into it, but for an individual to get involved in you're okay, it's hard. You can kind of track things, but the big thing is 3499 defines network grid, but not how to. The vendors did not want that to be done. They want their own playground. Europe says, no, we want an open standard for network remote ID. And they're spooling up some things, but how do network remote ID in a stateless mode or in a stateful mode or others. I've done work on that, and we need to say how we will play, because networking mode ID is very important for beyond visual line of sight. We're almost done with the original charter, but stopping now is the wrong action. The industry out there is moving on to the next steps, and we need to be moving along with them from what we originally did. So basically, I know I have been connected. I've been writing things up here of what will keep us in step, but now we need to charter along for what the next area in this industry is. And the last part, other drafts, the crowdsource, again, that ties into the ADSB that Stu mentioned. And Chic is going to be very important for DAA operations to be able to do that. So my work on the Chic program, that's again, not in here, elsewhere, but will get used. And that's, I think that's, come on. That's it. Okay, that's it. That's all I have. So, so questions? The industry's moving on. Are we going to move to?
Jim Reed speaking for myself. Interesting work here, Bob, and I'm a bit surprised we're seeing all this flurry of interest from ICAO coming in now. So I've got more of a sort of question here on a meta issue about how we address that in both this working group and the IETF more generally. I'm not sure it's a good idea to recharter this working group. I think this working group is pretty much just done. You know, we've done everything we've pretty much set out to do, and maybe it's time to just wind up the working group. On the other hand, I think there's a need to do something further to continue and maintain this relationship with ICAO. And I'm not sure what the best mechanism for that might be. Do we need to have a formal liaison mechanism like we have with some other organizations that the IETF deals with on a more routine basis? Or perhaps we can do this with individual RFCs going down the individual submissions routes rather than going through a working group. That's maybe more of a question for our co-chairs and area director here. But it's not clear to me as to how the way to proceed is going to be. And I think what we also be careful about that when we're looking at the way we proceed is not just how it fits with what the IETF does, but the expectations that are going to come from ICAO and others and what they're looking to see from the IETF. And they will not be aware of all our processes and procedures. But we may have a situation where we have to stand up a working group, which maybe doesn't meet all that often, but it needs to be there because that's the perceived mechanism that ICAO or others feel that that's how they have to deal with the IETF. So I don't have any answers here, but I just thought this is a question that needs careful consideration.
There is a liaison document that came of ICAO to connect to IETF. That has not, there's been probably like who in IETF would deal with that. That's an open issue. That 2 years ago that came out. That liaison letter that came out from the IETF Secretariat. So there is something there.
Yeah, but we have to be careful here. There's a question of terminology. There's a difference between a liaison statement and a liaison. The liaison is the person. And I think
that's what they're asking for. Who is the person?
Well, yeah. And that's maybe a question probably to have to be for the IEB to answer.
Yeah, so there was they say, who is the person who will be functioning in this? The other things ICAO expects to have things that they can reference in their documents, standards they can point to. So it's like, if you're working on something, you can do the standard, they will gladly, excitedly just reference that particular document to meet their needs.
Yeah. But how do we do that? I don't know.
No. Eric Vink, responsibility for DRIP, and you just said it, to meet their needs, but we need to get them their needs, right? And a simple liaison statement, because if we want, and I don't mind, right, it could be done of having an official liaison between ICAO and IETF, like we do with other, like ITU, ETSI, and other 3GPP. Why not? Possible, but that's different. The dream, really, to continue DRIP and the work here is to get a liaison statement. We do not need something which is countersigned by 139 people or member state, but by the head of some working group in ICAO to the working group chair. It's enough for ourselves.
I have
we will make all the discussion done I mean, complete it, check, and go forward.
I have a copy of the liaison statement. I recall the others listed in it. So maybe we can have somebody here who can speak to it. Go ahead, Jim. And
Yeah, thanks, Bob. It's more a question of responses to liaison statements. There may be a perception that liaison statements can only be replied from the IB. That's not the case, because I've gone through all that kind of stuff to do with some craziness in the ITU. And the direction came from the IB is you can go to the relevant working groups, and either the working group co-chairs or the appropriate area directors can draft a liaison statement response. It doesn't have to go through the IB directly.
I think they just need to be recorded, right? Like a statement. If there's an official liaison to ICAO, and I don't think there is, that person would need to record it in our liaison statement tracker. But as a working group chair, I've sent liaisons to other organizations before. Yeah.
Hi everyone, Mike Goodfellow, actually from ICAO. So please excuse me if I say anything stupid or ask any dumb questions. This is my first IETF meeting.
All we get around here all the time.
Yeah, so I guess maybe just to clarify a couple things. From ICAO standpoint, I think to the point that Stu was making beforehand, if we're going to put something into an ICAO document, generally we use RFCs all the time. We prefer to use RFCs. We already have over 15,000 standards that we manage right now. We're not looking to add another 2,000 on top of that just for giggles. But really kind of, I think, because we want to leverage the great work that does go on here, and not reinvent the wheel, and not even worse, end up in a situation where we just do a copy and paste of a standard, we end up with drift over time, which is, we've learned that lesson the hard way once or twice. What's the best way of working forward? So that's kind of why we want to get into this, relationship, however that turns out. And I don't know exactly what, when we made the first approach, we did it from the ICAO angle, blindly and naively assuming that, you guys would figure it out. And I think that, there's probably mechanisms, but I think we also need to have a bit of a discussion to figure out, settle what the language is and then the way forward. But I'll leave that to you guys.
Eric might want to hop in here too, but I like to operate from the assumption that you're not the first organization to have this problem. So someone smarter than us has somewhere figured out what a workable solution is if we know what your requirements are.
yeah, kind of thrown a black hole when the letter originally came out, and how to move forward. And I can forward to you because the letter that we got specifically lists us as individuals and then various organizations like IETF and so forth, and IANA on that, and so it dropped into a black hole. Okay, so I'm ready to do work. If I can have a framework in which to do it in, there's places for this to drop. Like I said, the operator privacy, ASTM, which we don't have a liaison with them, they have a place for referencing RFCs, and they want to do that. So that's how we move on that.
Anything further? Thank you. Adam. I think Adam is next.
So someone's going to have to take notes in my stead. I can't do two things in once, unfortunately.
Adam, I'll do hard copy and hand it to you. How's that?
Just take my laptop. Okay, fine. Thank you. Let's see here. Okay, so my name is Adam Whitaker. I work for AX Enterprise. I'm a systems engineer, basically focused on trustworthy systems. And I'm going to talk to you about trustworthy air domain awareness and the work I've been doing for the past about 8 months now. So first off, I'd like to talk about what trustworthy domain awareness is. It's an ideology promoting the use of the standards and practices to improve levels of trust and assurance for a system in a domain. Our first domain is obviously with unmanned aircraft systems, aviation. So as Stu pointed out in his presentation, we call it TADA, and it's not limited to UAS. We have the noble goal of helping the entire aviation ecosystem out when possible. And TADA puts an ideology into practice by using the DRIP entity tags from RFC 9374 and its supporting infrastructure in the DET DNS draft that's in the editor queue and other documents that are in flight. And it's all about leveraging and directly applying work and expanding work from this working group. So there is ConOps for using DETs in the aviation ecosystem. This is a document I've been working on, and it needed to have the remaining technical pieces for the public interfaces for a management entity, and multiple CAAs were showing private interest in adopting DRIP, but were missing that piece, and were exploring their options and how they wanted to approach it. And for a lot of CAAs, you need a means of compliance for their vendors to go against. And as Stu pointed out in his slides, there is we have a lot of coordination, ASTM, ICAO here, and then the new group, Drone Squad, for the endorsement of the standards. And when you get an endorsement from Drone Squad, from our understanding, individual mocks for those 4 nations are created, making them a standard, become a means of compliance in that region. And we have other work for enabling the use of DRIP in ASTM, in A2X and DAA, as Bob pointed out a little bit in his slides. And there is a proposal to be an identity authentication component in the next generation of ADSB and ICAO in the surveillance panel, and using DETs there. That is an ongoing discussion that's just started. So right now, the registry's document is on a short final. It's past the ISG. It's in the editor queue. As Stu pointed out, we have a couple weeks. We'll be getting that back at the author's side, and we should have that out hopefully by the end of the year. IANA cleared the code points, set up the prefix reverse zone in the IP6.ARPA space, and I want to thank Jim for checking the delegations and notifying IANA that there was an error in one of the delegations that was corrected. I will be asking for a missing acknowledgement section with reviewers that was missed in the last version, but we'll just add it there. I don't believe there's anything else left to do on this document, but I can be corrected off mic if that's the case. So I am requesting for departure 2 documents, though now I'm going to change it to 1. The first one is the TDA document. This is basically laying out roles and requirements in the UAS ecosystem to use DRIP, and it's at the moment was focused on catering to regulators and their implementators that were driven by regulator mandates. This is kind of going back to Stu's comments on the requirements that the regulators are mandating on various vendors in Part 146. That document also extracted a part of the Bob's DKI document, specifically the X509 profiles, and then it filled the remaining technical gap. And that was a standardized interface for registering a DET and pulling data out of the DET. And that one was very simple, just using RDAP, but figuring out what our authentication and authorization scheme was. This is just an example of the 2 registration things. This is a mix of an HTTP and a CDDL, so it's not true HTTP, but this is kind of what a request and a response to a request would look like. So for this document, we would like it to be defined to be used as a mock or for mocks in various regions to get global harmonization of DET use cases in aviation. It was originally proposed to be referenced in an ASTM document annex and then tweaked for specific regulator feedback. This particular document would have been focused on the US, but then we learned about Drone Squad recently and that inter-regulator effort, and now we want to look at the HPS criteria and amend our document to align more with that so it can be submitted there. And then there's an open question of hackathons and plugfest with vendors at a future IETF, whether it's 125 or 126, to put this document, at least the technical parts, in practice. And then the final piece of this is that this document that I'm asking for adoption is quite large. It has a very big scope. There's a lot of semi-policy stuff at the beginning, and then a technical middle section and a technical appendix. But it's and it all should it all works together, but it gets quite unwieldy to understand. And it covers the 4 major areas on the slide: the registration, the query, the profiles, and the ecosystem stuff. So I've been working behind the scenes on potentially breaking it into 3 documents: an interface document, an X509 profile document, and a ConOps. And only the ConOps would go to Drone Squad for evaluation. And as Stu asked earlier, maybe ConOps is the best current practice. This is a discussion we would have to have. The other document that I had on for adoption is a CSADA. This is crowdsourced air domain awareness, and it was an expansion of the CS RID concept from Bob, but it's more not specifically about RID, but more just, oh, you have sensors that you're using to get domain awareness. How can there be a common way to send that data back to get a domain awareness screen to have access to it? So there is some discussion on how we would merge Bob's draft into this or the other way around, and hackathons and plugins. That is my final slide. Enjoy the lovely XKCD with drones on it, and I hope this is a future we'll have at some point where drones will just deliver water slides so that I don't have to walk downhill. I can just slide down. And any questions or comments or concerns at the mic? No.
I guess we're looking at list traffic.
Okay, well, list traffic would be appreciated on the document. It's up there. I do have the 3 document, the split document. I can push it up as a split or leave it as a full. Leave it as I'll take review in the list.
I don't have a preference about how you do that. I think that it should be a working group decision whether that's one.
Right. Yeah. Okay. We'll leave it. We'll put it up to the list. I'll start a thing in the list actually right now after this.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good. The ICAO IETF liaison statement. Fred's remote, right?
Are you hearing me?
Okay, you go ahead.
Yeah.
Hold up, Adam.
So just one question regarding the documents described by Adam. I'm just wondering who read the document in the group?
Quite a bit. Many versions.
Okay, right. Thank you.
All the slots for
Actually, Stu Card here again. As far as having read the document, Adam has created quite a number of versions in order to try to somehow fit into the IETF process. Right? Initially, he had one document that covered everything, and then there was among the few reviews that we got, there were indications that it was too big, its scope was too broad, so he broke it up into multiple documents. But now we feel like there's not going to be an appetite for adopting multiple documents, so he's thinking about squashing it back together. He's working very hard to try to fit the need within the IETF process.
And in this, before I give off to Fred, if you don't mind, Fred, just to say, if there's no appetite, I am more than happy to go into independent submission with any of these documents. So I believe it's important work to be done, to be standardized, and I will take any approach that we can work with to make it possible. So I'm open to how we approach this.
Does ICAO need standards track documents from us, or do they take any RFC?
Michael, can you answer that? Because I don't think I can.
Because
I don't want to put words in.
No, I
his mouth.
understand. I thought maybe the working group might have faced this question before. Either way is fine, but like the independent submission stream can only produce informational documents or experimental.
I was unaware of that.
So you can't get a standards track document on that path. It has. So my question, we need to find out from ICAO if it has to be standards track or a BCP. We only have one way to do that.
Understood. I was unaware of the informational experimental thing.
As DKI. as the DKI draft? Is it informational?
So in this case, Mike Felike, I will beg not to shoot the messenger, but I don't know that we actually have any delineation in that regard. If it is, we've taken the attitude so far that if it's referenceable within the IETF body of work, then, you know, and it has a level of stability attached to it, we can reference it. But I think there's, generally speaking, a preference for an RFC, but beyond that, the details elude us at this moment.
Watch out for the ones dated April 1st, that's all. Okay, Fred, take it away.
Okay, thank you. This is about ICAO IETF Liaison Statement number 1676, which is in the IETF Liaison Statement repository. It's titled the Omni Interface, and this is an update and status about that liaison statement. So the International Civil Aviation Organization, Working Group I, and its mobility subgroup have designed an aeronautical telecommunications network with Internet Protocol Services, or ATN-IPS, for worldwide civil aviation. Aircraft require an IP version 6 air-to-ground interface as a virtual overlay over all of the underlay wireless and radio interfaces on the aircraft, which include VHF, L-band, various forms of SATCOM, cellular, Wi-Fi, and others. The interface must support mobility, multi-link, multi-net, multi-hop, multicast, and performance maximization. And so for this purpose, ICAO issued a liaison statement number 1676 requesting the IETF to develop an overlay multi-link network interface. And that's what this liaison statement that you see on the first page is about. So the statement was issued on March 2020 by ICAO Working Group I. The ICAO contact at that time was Vaughn Mayola, who was the Working Group I secretary at the time. But Vaughn tragically passed away in January of 2022. The liaison statement was directed to the current IETF 6-man working group chairs at that time, which was Bob Hinden and Ole Trone. The technical contacts were myself and Eric Vink. We had a schedule, which you'll see on this next chart, that was overly optimistic and did not anticipate the highly detailed nature of the specifications. So we still see this liaison statement as an applicable work authorization, but the work has now reached a level of maturity ready for advancement. So what the Omni interface is a non-broadcast multiple access virtual interface configured over the node's multiple underlay interfaces. So the network layer sees the Omni interface as an ordinary IPv6 interface, and as such, the interface must assign an IPv6 address. And the question is, what kind of IPv6 address can you assign to this virtual interface? Each node must be able to assign a single globally unique address that applies locally over all of the available underlay interfaces. The address must be topology independent and registered with an address registration authority, which ensures trust and freedom from duplication. And addresses must be unambiguous identifier for the node with a similar property to the MAC address, but with assured uniqueness properties. And what we see as a very good fit for this is the DRIP entity tag from RFC 9374. Due to multi-link, local addresses out of scope and a new scope of addresses is needed, and so we've designed this new scope of addresses called multi-link local address, or MLA. And again, RFC 9374 provides a good candidate address type for MLAs. This is just thumbing through the liaison statement as we go through these charts now. So in terms of status, work on Omni has progressed continuously since the liaison statement was issued up to the present day. The liaison statement, again, is still seen as a valid work authorization, but the work has now reached a level of maturity ready for IETF adoption. The overlay multi-link network interface and its companion mobility service called Automatic Extended Route Optimization, or AERO, used the multi-link local address specification for addressing. And again, RFC 9374 addressing properties provide a good candidate for MLAs. We're also exploring synergies for mobile ad hoc networks as a natural extension for man-made networking. And we'll be talking about this tomorrow. And that's what I have to present today.
Anything for Fred? Bob's going up.
I'm very happy and pleased that you see the debt as how it well fits in to the work you've been doing here all along. It was my intent as part of design that any application be fat, dumb, and happy and use a debt and not know what the network is underneath. It's a valid IPv6 address. And then it can just use it for however it wants. So its use here in Omni makes a lot of sense. And whatever we can do to move that forward and the rest of it, let's get going on it.
Glad you see the value, Bob. I do too.
Anything else for this topic? For Fred's presentation. Thank you, Fred. I'll clean the slide.
Thank you.
back. And I believe, one second. That was the end of our primary agenda. We had one area under, sorry, we have any other business, and I had one slide from, one slide deck from what? ITA. Oh, slides up.
So everyone, I'm André Mel, and are you hearing me out? Okay. So, thank you.
Change the slides.
Perfect. So everyone, I'm André Melo. I'm from ITA in Brazil, which is the Institute of Technology for Aeronautical Things, under the Brazilian Air Force, which is the responsible for part of the civilian aviation authority in Brazil. And I will show for you guys our roadmap about the UTM implementations in Brazil. We had working with UTM traffic solutions from 2016 when we start to create an internal technical solution to register the drone operations in Brazil. And we are using the solution right now. And nowadays we have near 500,000 operations per year. And most of these operations, we allow the use of the airspace automatically. And for 10%, we need a human analysis over this. And this model is not a scalable one for the future of the UTM operations. So we are proposing working on a new solution with using Inter-USS, which is a Linux Software Foundation solution. We implement the ESTM standards. Thank you, Bob, for the standards and the guys which are implement that in Inter-USS solutions. And this using a more scalable and new architecture where DRIP is directly between operator and the drone, and maybe something with the supplementary service provider, which we have a new standard right now. And we created this structure. We put this in a sandbox area in Brazil and conducting some studies. These studies basically help us to understand how we can share the airspace dynamically and handle with the constraints and propagate the informations. This is all described in the ESTM standards, and this is just we are testing in a field operations in Brazil. So, well, we conducted a field test in last year using different sort of drones and test exactly the standards and the problems and how our process and solutions needs to be designed to integrate that. So as a result of this test field, this tests, we are updating our regulations to allow operations to create, to put in Brazil the ESTM standards as a mandatory thing for the future of the operations. So this is a call for comments for our regulations. This is an open right now in Brazil. We have around 30 days to start this process. We have a lot of gaps on it, but the main idea here is show to the all industry this is a real thing and a real need for the authority. So, and for this next Sunday, we're gonna be a measurement procedure in Brazil where my team will be in the Formula One Grand Prix in Brazil, and this is an uncommon airspace operation because it has a lot of helicopters operating and a lot of drones using the take images from the autodrome area, from police forcements and a lot of structures. And our main goal with this test is understand how we can use the SDSP standard. And we are using a device to capture the drone's positions and translate that for remote AD protocol and share these in all structure. We create some tools for it. And so if anyone go to what the Formula One Grand Prix probably has some guys from our side taking measures and trying to understand more how we can use these standards and how this architecture will be using to update our solutions right now. So this is all from my side, and thank you all for having me.
Any questions, comments? Nothing?
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks. And I'm told Owen wants to say something really quickly.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. And I realize I have about 2 minutes at most here. So my name is Owen Pearson. I'm a software engineer, a pilot flying airplanes and helicopters, and I'm with Transport Canada's Strategy and Emerging Technologies branch. Formerly, we were the drone task force and the ones responsible for the new rules that Stu mentioned that came into effect yesterday. So we're the regulator for everything that flies in Canada. And more specifically, I work in the space of how do we integrate uncrewed aircraft into the airspace. And I work in standards development along with the folks at IETF and EuroK for the uncrewed traffic management systems, but we happen to call it RPAS traffic management. Here's the key piece. As you know, Transport Canada is interested in ensuring that we have a variety of means of compliance documents that exist to support performance-based standards for effective RPAS remote identification in different operational environments, primarily when we view it through a security lens. We can envision that a certain subset of UAS operations, especially those that are security sensitive, would be benefiting from and potentially requiring enhancements in spoofing and non-repudiation protections, authentication, privacy. You guys all know the body of work and what it brings. So we see value in that in some of our future operations. Still some ways off, but the work that this group has undertaken may be a key piece to contributing to that. So that's all I wanted to say, and thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I've enjoyed the conversation today.
Thank you. If we 2 minutes remaining.
Yeah. Hi, my name's John Gray. This is my first time at DRIP. The reason I came, I'm usually involved with like the X509, PKI, PQC stuff. So I've been talking to Stu and Bob a little bit about, from what I understand, you have problems like highly constrained network environment, like you're talking to remote satellites and all these things. So I'm interested in, possibly helping with looking at, solutions like how can we do this in the context of PQ? So I'm just saying, I guess I'm willing to help, and, I see something about a DKI, so I'm interested in looking at that. So, so anyway, if there's any like crash course on like how this whole DRIP infrastructure stuff works, if someone can give me that information, I'll try to catch up and then see how I can, use my experience and help with, solving those, hard PQ constrained environment problems.
I saw a hand raised. Also, I imagine the mailing list that you could probably find a couple of volunteers to catch you up on the last several years of work that's been done here. Jim, and then we're done.
Thanks, Murray. Just a shameless plug. Arno Tadei, who's the chair of Stud Group 17 at the ITU, is here this week. So if you want to have a chat with him about what's going on with X509, try and grab him in the hallway.
I believe we're within a few seconds of time, so we'll call it there. Thank you for your help with the minutes and the relaying, Eric. And thank you, everybody, for coming to DRIP. We'll see you. Well, you won't see me, but you'll see some of us in Shenzhen, and I'll see you all in Vienna if we go that far. Yes, right. Yeah. And welcome. There were a lot of documents presented here.
I think DRIP did not met in IETF 123, so that's the first time we meet since the change of the chair. Forgot to say welcome to Murray. He's a pilot as well.
Yes.